Most people waste years of their lives trying to figure out a narcissist. They consume endless books, scroll through online forums until their eyes ache, and lie wide awake at 3 o'clock in the morning, replaying old conversations over and over in their heads. They torture themselves trying to pinpoint the exact moment everything went wrong, desperately looking for the turning point where the warmth disappeared and the cruelty took over. They want to know why someone who claimed to love them more than life itself could suddenly treat them like disposable furniture. It is a haunting, exhausting cycle of trying to understand why the very person who promised to protect them became the exact threat they needed protection from. But here is the brutal truth that nobody tells you early enough. Understanding a narcissist will not save you. Gaining a master's degree in their pathology will not set you free, and trying to fight them on their terms will never work. You have to realize that you are dealing with a person who has been refining this exact game their entire life. Long before you ever crossed their path, they were already manipulating, controlling, and feeding off the energy of everyone around them. This isn't a normal person who just happens to misbehave when they are stressed or having a bad day. You are dealing with a deeply ingrained, rigid psychological structure that was built brick by brick for the sole purpose of consuming your identity to sustain their own. The biggest trap you can fall into is believing that if you just explain your pain clearly enough or find the perfect combination of words, they will finally have an epiphany and change. They won't. They lack the internal machinery required for self-reflection. When you try to decode their behavior as if it's a temporary misunderstanding, you are applying normal human logic to a fundamentally broken system. Every hour you spend analyzing their mixed signals is an hour you are investing in their reality instead of your own. They want you trapped in this analytical loop, because as long as you are trying to understand them, your mind is entirely occupied by them. But here is what they desperately want to keep hidden from you. What actually destroys a narcissist does not look like a movie-style dramatic revenge. It is not about screaming at them, exposing their dark secrets to the world, or finally winning that exhausting argument they have been baiting you into for months. In fact, when you yell, cry, or try to publicly humiliate them, you are actually giving them exactly what they want. You are proving that they still have complete control over your emotional state. You are showing them that they are powerful enough to make you lose your mind. What actually destroys them is something much quieter, much colder, and entirely permanent. It is a specific, calculated sequence of psychological boundary adjustments that systematically dismantles the false reality they force everyone to live in. Once you see beneath the noise and understand how their fragile inner architecture actually works, you will know exactly where to apply pressure. You won't do it with anger, and you won't do it with cruelty. You will do it with absolute, unshakable clarity. This is a clinical map of 4 precise ways to strip away their power and reclaim your life. If you apply even one of these steps with unwavering consistency, you will watch their entire matrix begin to crack. Not because you went out of your way to hurt them, but because you simply chose to stop letting them hurt you. Before you can successfully deploy these 4 methods, you have to grasp one foundational, unsettling concept. The narcissist does not actually exist the way you think they do. This is the hardest part for the human brain to process because we naturally assume that everyone operates with a basic core identity. But beneath the staggering arrogance, the loud confidence, and the carefully curated image they present to the public, there is a completely hollow center. They have no stable sense of self, no internal emotional compass, and no genuine inner life that they can access independently. To survive this deep internal void, they rely entirely on a false self. This is a highly sophisticated psychological character they engineered back in early childhood as a defense mechanism against overwhelming, buried feelings of shame, defectiveness, and utter worthlessness. At some point in their development, the pain of feeling inadequate was too heavy for their young mind to hold, so they made an unconscious deal with themselves. They buried their true, vulnerable self deep in a psychological vault, built a grand, flawless performance over the top of it, and decided that the performance was their actual identity. The fatal catch with living as a performance is that a performance requires a constant audience. A stage actor cannot perform in an empty theater without eventually realizing they are just talking to a dark, silent room. Without people watching them, reacting to them, validating them, fearing them, or even actively hating them, the narcissist's entire illusion of existence begins to collapse. They cannot regulate their own emotions from the inside out like a healthy person does. They have no internal reservoir of self-esteem. Therefore, they are entirely dependent on external validation, what psychologists call narcissistic supply, just to feel like they are real and superior to the rest of the world. Without it, they face an unbearable, terrifying emptiness that threatens to expose the hidden shame underneath the mask. For a very long time, the most potent, reliable source of that life support was you. They chose you because you had an abundance of empathy, care, and energy to give. Every single time you reacted to their manufactured moods, you fed their need for control. Every time you walked on eggshells, changed your schedule, or suppressed your own needs just to keep the peace, you powered their illusion of omnipotence. Even when you fought back, cried in frustration, or spent hours defending your character against their twisted lies, you were validating their importance. You were confirming to their disordered mind that they were the absolute center of gravity in your universe. For a personality structure built entirely on the desperate, addictive need to be significant, there is no greater drug than watching a good person orbit them in perpetual pain. That is the game they are playing, and it is exactly where we strike back. Each of the following 4 methods is specifically designed to sever a different, critical lifeline that their false self depends on to survive. Number 1. Master the power of silence. The first method targets their most vital resource, their energy supply. To understand why this is so devastating to them, you have to look closely at your average day inside that relationship. From the physical second you woke up in the morning, a part of your brain was already operating like an advanced radar system, scanning their emotional weather patterns. Before your feet even hit the floor, you are calculating their state of mind. What mood are they in today? Did last night's tension carry over into this morning, or has the storm temporarily passed? Should you say something first to smooth things over, or should you stay completely quiet and wait for them to set the tone of the house? You learn to check their facial expressions, the tone of their voice, and even the heaviness of their footsteps, the exact same way a sailor checks a darkening sky for a hurricane. This constant vigilance was never a conscious choice you made because you wanted to live that way. It was a survival reflex designed by your own biology. Over months or years of living in a hyper-unpredictable, emotionally volatile environment, your nervous system learned a hard lesson. Monitoring them at all times was the only way to stay safe. It was always better to anticipate their next explosion than to be caught completely off guard by it. So your brain stayed locked in high alert mode, operating a 24/7 surveillance system on another person's emotions just to protect yourself from the next psychological ambush. But here is what you need to realize, that continuous monitoring is actually a massive, non-stop transfer of personal wealth. Every single minute you spend analyzing them, you are handing over your attention, your precious mental bandwidth, and your deep emotional processing power directly into their hands. They are completely draining your bank account of mental peace. Even when they weren't physically in the room with you, even when you were driving to work, sitting in a meeting, spending time with friends, or trying to fall asleep, they were still squatting inside your mind, occupying massive amounts of real estate that belonged to you. They didn't earn that space through love or mutual respect. They engineered it through cold, calculated unpredictability. They purposefully hooked you on hot and cold cycles, giving you just enough fake warmth to keep you hoping, and just enough sudden cruelty to keep you perpetually anxious. They built a psychological prison where thinking about them felt like survival, because for a very long time, it actually was. Mastering the power of silence is the moment you break out of that prison. But you have to understand what real silence actually means. It is absolutely not about playing the traditional passive-aggressive silent treatment. It is not about crossing your arms, ignoring their text messages, or performing a big show of indifference while your jaw is tightly clenched and your heart is hammering against your ribs. Narcissists are hypersensitive to emotional undercurrents. They have spent their entire lives reading people to manipulate them, so they can feel the heavy emotional charge behind a fake, performed detachment. If you are pretending not to care, but your body is vibrating with suppressed anger or pain, they know it. They see the tight strain in your posture, and they take it as a massive victory. They know they still have a direct line into your nervous system, and as long as they are producing an effect in you, they know they still matter. True silence is completely different. It is a quiet, entirely unannounced internal decision to stop making that person the organizing principle of your universe. It is a private boundary you set with yourself to stop measuring the value of your days by their volatile reactions. You stop filtering your personal choices through the constant, fearful question of how they will respond. Reclaiming your mental real estate doesn't happen by throwing a dramatic eviction party or having a final, explosive confrontation. It happens by quietly, steadily, and permanently redirecting your investment away from their drama and pouring it back into your own life, your own goals, and your own healing. Number 2, emotional detachment strategy. This radical internal shift begins with a step that most people actively resist because on the surface it feels completely like defeat. It begins with genuine, heavy grief. You have to allow yourself to grieve the painful fact that the person you loved, the person you built a future around in your mind, was never fully real. This is a bitter pill to swallow, but it is the only way out. The incredibly attentive, deeply magnetic, and seemingly devoted partner you met in the very beginning of the relationship was never a real human being. It was a carefully crafted performance designed specifically to hook your empathy and reel you into their web. You have to accept the reality that the relationship you thought you were building brick by brick was never a mutual bond. From their side, it was entirely a cold transaction to extract supply. Grieving this loss is not a sign of weakness, and it isn't giving up. It is the most profound, necessary piece of psychological work you will ever do in your life. Until you fully grieve that beautiful illusion, a lingering part of you will always stay trapped in the cycle. You will keep reaching backward for a ghost, hoping against hope that the sweet, early version of them will suddenly return if you just do something differently. That false hope is exactly what causes people to give narcissists endless second chances. Chances that cost you your sanity, your time, and your dignity, while meaning absolutely nothing to a person who cannot value them. The moment you face that grief head-on and accept reality for exactly what it is, something incredible happens. The emotional charge around them completely dissolves. The chains lose their grip. You naturally stop rehearsing hypothetical arguments in your head while you're in the shower. You stop endlessly analyzing their bizarre behavior, trying to find a shred of human logic that was never there to begin with. You stop waiting around for a heartfelt apology that they are constitutionally incapable of ever giving or meaning. In that quiet emptiness where the obsession used to live, the parts of yourself that you lost along the way finally begin to grow back. This is the exact moment the shift becomes visible to the outside world. You don't need to make a big announcement or change anything on the surface at first. The change is in the unshakable quality of your presence. You stop tensing up and bracing for impact when they walk through the door. You stop performing a fake calm while secretly feeling terrified on the inside. You stop over-explaining your basic decisions, stop over-apologizing for things you didn't do, and stop over-accommodating their ridiculous demands. You stop doing these things not because you are forcing yourself to hold back, but because you literally no longer feel the desperate internal urgency that used to make those behaviors feel necessary. You are finally grounded in your own truth. Make no mistake, the narcissist will feel this shift immediately. They are hardwired to detect even the slightest drop in their supply line. The very moment the emotional current that used to flow toward them begins to dry up and redirect inward, they will feel it like a sudden freezing drop in temperature. And they will instantly test you. They will purposely provoke you, throw a massive tantrum, or manufacture an artificial emergency designed to pull you straight back into your old reactive habits. They want to force you back into that familiar dynamic where their emotional state becomes your immediate rescue mission. When that test comes, and it will, your absolute only job is to notice the trap without stepping into it. Watch the performance unfold without being moved by it. You don't have to be stone cold, and you don't have to be cruel. You just have to be present to your own reality instead of being hijacked by theirs. Look at them the way you would look at an actor throwing a tantrum on a television screen. Because here is the ultimate truth about a narcissist's power over you. It was never actually their power. It was always your power on permanent loan to them. You were the battery keeping their illusion alive. You were the engine running their entire machine. The precise moment you genuinely begin to retrieve that energy, not as a temporary tactic to win a game, but as a lived, unshakable reality, their power doesn't just get smaller, it completely evaporates because it never came from them in the first place. You are simply taking back what was always yours. Number 3, focus on self-growth and success. When a narcissist realizes they are completely losing their psychological grip on you, they do not sit back and gracefully accept the loss. They are entirely incapable of doing that. Instead, their internal panic triggers a desperate defense mechanism, causing them to immediately double down on their fantasy world. They become significantly more grandiose, far more performative, and utterly obsessed with forcing everyone around them to see them as superior. They will stretch the truth to its absolute breaking point, boast louder, and twist everyday situations to make themselves look like either the ultimate hero or the ultimate victim. This frantic, dramatic escalation is exactly where you change the rules of engagement by becoming a mirror. You have to understand the core physics of a mirror. A mirror never argues, it never yells, it never defends itself, and it never tries to manipulate the image in front of it. It simply, blankly, and flawlessly reflects back exactly what is actually standing there in reality. Think about how you used to handle the grand delusions in the past. When the narcissist sat at the dinner table inflating a minor achievement into a historic victory, or completely rewriting a recent conversation to make themselves look blameless, you usually had 2 options. You could either exhaust yourself by nodding along, validating their blatant lies just to keep the peace, or you could call them out, argue the facts, and brace yourself for a massive toxic fallout. The mirror technique introduces a devastating third option that they have zero prepared defense against. You no longer have to participate in their script at all. Instead of matching their high emotional energy, you introduce a cold, unshakable drop of objective reality into their fantasy. You do this by asking a flat, purely factual question or making a quiet, neutral statement. You don't raise your voice, you don't roll your eyes, and you don't mock them. You simply say something like, "How does that match what happened with the project timeline last week?" Or, "That's interesting because I remember that event completely differently." The psychological effect of this technique is immediate and profound. Because you are delivering the truth with zero anger and no emotional point to prove, you hand them absolutely nothing to grab onto. You are just placing their fiction and the actual facts side by side without any extra commentary. This forces a microsecond of pure, terrifying exposure inside their mind. If you watch closely, you will see a sudden flicker in the narcissist's eyes or a sudden tightening in their facial expression. In that exact split second, they feel it, the massive, undeniable gap between their desperate story and the plain truth. And worst of all for them, they know for a fact that you see it too. They cannot reframe the conversation to call you hysterical, bitter, or crazy, because your tone was completely calm and professional. By consistently and quietly refusing to play the submissive, validating role they assign to you, you make yourself completely exhausting to perform around. A narcissist depends entirely on an audience that plays along with their delusions. The very second you become a clear, unyielding mirror, their grand performance falls flat, and the heavy mask they wear starts to feel too exhausting to maintain in your presence. Number 4, become emotionally unavailable. As you maintain this unshakable stance, you must accurately predict the inevitable escalation. When the narcissist realizes their usual tricks, charm, and casual lies are no longer moving you, they will not give up immediately. They will dig deep into their psychological arsenal and reach for much sharper, highly personalized weapons. They will purposely target your oldest insecurities, weaponize your deepest secrets, and drag up the exact vulnerabilities you shared with them in moments of sacred confidence. They will use everything they know about your heart to construct insults designed to cut you straight to the bone. You have to prepare yourself for this moment so that when it happens, you do not panic. This vicious escalation is not a sign that you are losing your footing. It is the ultimate psychological proof that the mirror is working perfectly. They are throwing everything at the wall because they are losing control. And this frantic behavior is just the chaotic cracking of their ego right before the entire structure collapses. Your only job during this storm is to stay entirely factual, stay crystal clear, and remain absolutely unmoved. This complete refusal to engage leads directly to the final, most devastating move of all, the total, permanent cutoff of all narcissistic supply. You have to deeply understand that to a disordered mind, supply is not just compliments, praise, and adoration. Narcissistic supply is literally any visible sign of emotional impact. If they can make you cry, they win. If they can make you yell in frustration, they win. If they can trap you in a 3-hour cycle of frantically explaining yourself and defending your character, they win. Every single one of those intense emotional reactions serves as an absolute confirmation to the narcissist that they are still the dominant center of your world. It proves they are powerful enough to control your inner state. When you react, you hand them the life support they need to avoid looking at their own empty core. Cutting off that supply means achieving a state of complete, unshakable structural independence, where their calculated provocations simply fail to produce an internal reaction. You reach a point of healing where the vicious insult lands, and instead of a spike of panic or rage, you feel nothing but a distant, quiet pity for how broken they truly are. When they realize the cruelty isn't working and they suddenly pivot to dramatic love bombing, performing sweet tenderness or fake remorse, it touches absolutely nothing essential inside you. You don't buy the act for a single second because you have already done the hard work of grieving the ghost of who you once hoped they were. You see the manipulation clearly, and you let it pass by like wind against concrete. When a narcissist is completely and permanently cut off from your emotional supply, they are hit by a consequence that no external punishment could ever replicate. They are stripped of the noise of your reactions, stripped of the distraction of your pain, and forced to sit entirely alone in the pitch dark with their own true self. The crushing emptiness, the deep-seated worthlessness, and the chaotic emotional poison they spent years exporting into your nervous system suddenly has nowhere left to go. It reflects right off your boundaries and flows directly back to its exact point of origin. You don't have to waste a single ounce of your energy trying to punish them, expose them, or get even. You are not their punishment. You have simply, beautifully chosen to stop being the cheap solution to their internal brokenness. Your quiet, grounded, and completely undramatic exit from their game is the most absolute, permanent form of justice they will ever have to face.